The White House bustled with preparation. Staffers rushed down marble corridors, floral arrangements were set in place, and a buzz of anticipation filled the East Room. President Trump was hosting an exclusive cultural forum, bringing together key figures from politics, media, and Hollywood. It was meant to be a symbolic event, a rare attempt to bridge the gap between Washington and the entertainment industry. Among the guest list, one name sparked whispers across political and media circles: Jennifer Lawrence. She had made no secret of her disdain for Trump's administration in interviews and award show speeches. Her invitation raised eyebrows, not just because of her views, but because she'd never once stepped foot inside the Trump-era White House. But this time, she accepted. Seated quietly near the podium, Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, reviewed her speech notes. Dressed in a navy blue blazer, her iconic silver cross necklace glinting under the chandeliers, Karoline wasn't intimidated. She was used to being underestimated, too young, too loyal to Trump, too outspoken. But she had a purpose here, and she wasn't going to let Hollywood mockery cloud her role. The room gradually filled with famous faces and powerful figures. Anderson Cooper, Elon Musk, even members of Congress mingled with film directors and writers. Then, the buzz spiked. Jennifer had arrived. Dressed in sleek black, her signature confidence radiated as she stepped in, greeting people with poised sarcasm. Reporters in the back leaned forward, sensing something would happen tonight. Karoline watched her quietly. Jennifer eventually found her seat, 3 rows away from the podium, directly in Karoline's line of sight. The two had never met, but Jennifer had thrown jabs at Karoline's press briefings on late-night shows before, calling her Trump's ventriloquist doll and the PR face of regression. Karoline never responded, until now. President Trump opened the evening with brief remarks, then stepped aside for a panel discussion titled "Narratives That Shape a Nation." That's when it happened. The moderator invited remarks from the audience. Jennifer stood up, unprompted, and took the mic. "I just think it's ironic," she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "that we're talking about narratives in a room run by someone who reads cue cards for a man who doesn't read at all." Laughter rippled through a segment of the audience. Jennifer added with a smirk, "Karoline's probably rehearsing how to dodge a question right now." The insult landed. Cameras turned, murmurs spread, a few gasps, a few chuckles. Karoline didn't blink. She looked down at her notes once, closed the folder, and stood up slowly. The moment was about to shift. Karoline stepped into the center aisle with quiet resolve. The chandeliers above her shimmered, but her expression remained still, almost unreadable. She walked calmly toward the podium, her heels echoing softly against the marble floor. The silence was loud, the kind of silence that demanded attention. Jennifer Lawrence leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, wearing a smirk that said, "Let's see what she's got." Karoline reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. Her hands didn't tremble. Her heart didn't race. She'd faced harder rooms than this. Press corps who hated her, viral hate online, moments of deep self-doubt. But tonight was different. This wasn't about politics alone. It was about dignity. She looked across the room, her eyes locking momentarily with Jennifer's. And then she began. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," Karoline said, her voice even, calm. "But apparently some people come to the White House not to listen or collaborate, but to perform." The room held its breath. "I've been called many things: a puppet, a mouthpiece, a political tool. It used to bother me. But then I realized something. People only call you names when they can't argue with your substance." A few murmurs, some nods. "Jennifer," Karoline said directly, turning toward the actress without an ounce of hesitation, "you've starred in movies where you play strong women, fighters, survivors, and yet tonight, in real life, you chose to mock a young woman, not because she was wrong, but because she was easy to dismiss." Jennifer's smirk faded just slightly. The room's tone shifted. "You see, I didn't grow up on red carpets. I didn't go to film school or dine with directors. I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. My family worked hard. I got to where I am by outworking people who never thought I belonged, including people like you." A slow wave of attention swept over the crowd. Karoline had everyone now, even the cameras, even the critics. This wasn't a speech. This was a slow, controlled takedown, one rooted not in rage, but in truth. "I've been serving the American people under a president I believe in. You may not agree with him. That's your right. But tonight, you made this personal. You didn't attack policy. You attacked me." Karoline paused. "And that's the difference between us. I fight for something bigger than myself. You mock to entertain." Jennifer shifted in her seat. Her fingers curled slightly at the edge of the chair. Karoline's voice didn't waver. "I don't need to rehearse dignity. I live it. I don't need to pretend to be a fighter on a screen. I fight here, in the room you tried to humiliate me in." The crowd was no longer sure how to react. It wasn't applause yet. It was awe. Karoline let a final line fall like a blade. "And if you think your fame gives you the right to belittle people serving this country, then maybe you should have stayed in Hollywood, where applause is paid for, not earned." She stepped back from the podium. And for a moment, just one, no one said a word. Not even Jennifer. The silence cracked slowly, like ice under weight. Then came the first response, a hesitant clap from a corner seat, followed by another, and then a third, stronger, louder. Within seconds, the East Room of the White House, once held hostage by tension, erupted into applause. It wasn't polite or obligatory. It was visceral. Karoline didn't smile. She didn't bow. She simply returned to her seat, her chin slightly raised, her expression unshaken. For her, this wasn't about winning a room. It was about restoring her own voice in it. Jennifer Lawrence sat motionless, her arms still crossed, but the earlier smirk was gone. Her face was carefully composed, but her eyes revealed something else, a flicker of disbelief. It wasn't that Karoline had spoken. It was how she had spoken, with clarity, control, and an undeniable sting of truth. Anderson Cooper, seated near the press row, leaned over to a CNN producer and whispered, "We may have just witnessed a career-defining moment." The crowd was now split. Hollywood elite at one end exchanged quiet glances, unsure whether to defend Jennifer or respect Karoline's audacity. On the other end, conservative leaders, including lawmakers and Trump aides, beamed with pride, some whispering to one another, "She just made history." President Trump himself stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, watching everything. He didn't speak, but his nod, slow and deliberate, sent a clear message to his inner circle. Karoline wasn't just a press secretary anymore. Jennifer leaned forward, finally picking up the mic again. Her voice was softer now, a bit hesitant. "I didn't mean to offend. I was just trying to make a point. Maybe it came out wrong." It was an attempt at humility, but it fell flat. Karoline didn't respond. She didn't need to. But someone else did. A young Marine, dressed in formal uniform, standing near the back wall, stepped forward slightly. "Ma'am," he said, nodding toward Karoline, "thank you for saying what a lot of us think but never get to say." The room turned. His voice had pierced through the tension like a bullet through smoke. Karoline simply nodded back, her lips tight but respectful. Jennifer looked away. This wasn't how the night was supposed to go. She came expecting applause for her usual one-liners, not pushback from someone half her age. She'd underestimated Karoline, not just her position, but her presence. And that mistake had been broadcast in front of political leaders, military members, and millions watching online. Outside, on X, the moment had already gone viral. Clips of Karolines' response spread like wildfire. Hashtags like "Karoline claps back" and "Hollywood silenced" began trending within minutes. Conservative commentators declared it the night the script flipped. Even some moderate voices chimed in, calling it a powerful defense of public service. Inside the East Room, though, a strange calm returned. Karoline sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her silver cross glinting under the lights. She didn't look around. She didn't revel in the applause. She was already thinking ahead. She knew this wasn't over. Because when you silence someone like Jennifer Lawrence, the backlash isn't far behind. The East Room gradually returned to its ceremonial calm, but the air still crackled with unspoken tension. Though the applause had faded, its echo remained in every glance, every shifting seat, every phone buzzing silently in the laps of aides and reporters. Karoline stayed poised, her gaze forward, but her phone, face down in her purse, was already lighting up like a Christmas tree. Outside the White House, the internet was boiling. A 30-second clip of her line, "Maybe you should have stayed in Hollywood, where applause is paid for, not earned," hit over 500,000 views in under 10 minutes. Conservative influencers blasted it out like a war cry. Liberal accounts tried to spin it as scripted political theater, but even they couldn't deny the precision in Karoline's words. One major news network posted, "Karoline Leavitt silences Jennifer Lawrence in brutal White House exchange." And it's all on video. Even TikTok got in on the action, with Gen Zers remixing Karoline's moment into dramatic edits. A trending sound bite emerged, Karoline's calm but cutting voice layered over cinematic music. "You mock to entertain. I fight for something bigger than myself." Back in the room, Jennifer Lawrence sat rigid, occasionally forcing small talk with people nearby. But the damage was already done. She had walked into the White House expecting to dominate the narrative, and left the stage with a bruise to her public persona. Karoline wasn't gloating. She never did. But in a private hallway moment just minutes later, her communications assistant, Emma, caught up to her, eyes wide. "You just detonated the internet," she whispered. "Ben Shapiro retweeted you. Candace Owens is already calling you the future of conservative fire." Karoline exhaled slowly, but her voice remained steady. "Good," she said. "Then they're listening." Trump's senior aide, Stephen Miller, approached next. No words, just a pat on her shoulder and a knowing look. "She'll respond," he murmured. "Hollywood doesn't like being embarrassed." Karoline nodded. "Let her." Meanwhile, Jennifer's PR team had already begun crafting a response statement to the press. It was a lighthearted joke, they wrote. Misinterpreted. Jennifer has deep respect for public service, but screenshots of her smirk, her scoff, her timing, all told a different story, and America had already picked sides. Later that evening, as Karoline returned to her office in the West Wing, she finally checked her phone. Over 300 new messages, including a direct text from President Trump himself. "You just rewrote the rules. Proud of you." She stared at the message, then flipped open her laptop to draft a press statement. Not about Jennifer, not even about herself, but about the dignity of service. If the country was watching, she wanted to remind them what they were really seeing. A woman not afraid to be underestimated, and a movement no longer willing to be silenced. Outside, the headlines screamed. But inside Karoline's mind, she was already preparing for round two. The morning after the White House event, the sun hadn't even crested above the Potomac before the media storm rolled in. Karoline woke up to her phone vibrating nonstop, notifications cascading in from every platform. CNN was running a panel titled, "Did Karoline Leavitt Go Too Far?" MSNBC's morning host questioned her tone. It felt aggressive, disrespectful even, especially to a cultural icon like Jennifer Lawrence. On The View, Whoopi Goldberg clutched her coffee cup and scoffed, "Another MAGA kid with a mic. Congratulations, Karoline. You've just turned the White House into a talent show audition." Karoline sat in her White House office, flipping through channels with an unbothered expression. She'd expected the backlash. In fact, she welcomed it. Because with outrage came reach, and with reach came influence. But what she didn't expect was what came next. Jennifer Lawrence released a video statement, direct to her millions of followers. Filmed in what looked like her Los Angeles kitchen, Jennifer leaned casually against the counter, her tone far from apologetic. "Last night I made a joke. I thought it was funny. Clearly others didn't. But let's be honest, what if being called out by a political intern rattles Hollywood, then maybe we've gone soft. That said, I won't be silenced by a press secretary whose job is defending chaos." The clip ended with a smirk. Karoline watched it once, then again. She didn't flinch. A knock came at her door. Emma stepped in, eyes wide with concern. "It's already got 6 million views," she said, holding up her phone. "They're painting you as some power-hungry kid." Karoline leaned back, folding her arms. "Good," she said calmly, "because I've got something they can't spin. The truth." She tapped her desk, pulling out a file labeled Hollywood and Hypocrisy, Prepared Remarks. Emma raised a brow. "You wrote a speech?" Karoline nodded. "Not a speech, a reminder." The comms team got to work. By noon, a press briefing was announced, a special one, open to all outlets. No pre-screened questions, no topic restrictions, and yes, Jennifer's name would be mentioned. The West Wing press room buzzed with energy. Reporters from every major network squeezed in. Bloggers, influencers, and even some late-night writers showed up just to see if Karoline would back down. She didn't. At exactly 1 p.m., she walked to the podium in a crisp navy dress, the silver cross still gleaming at her collar. She paused for a moment, surveying the room. Cameras clicked, lights brightened, and then she began. "Last night, I was mocked by someone who's never spent a day in public service. Today, I'm here to remind America what service looks like, and why we must never confuse celebrity with leadership." Gasps. "This isn't about Jennifer Lawrence. This is about every working American who's ever been talked down to because they didn't have a movie deal, a fashion contract, or a blue checkmark on social media." The room froze. Phones shot up. Some hands even clapped. Karoline continued, "You can mock me, but you can't mock the values I represent: faith, discipline, and love of country. And if standing up for those things makes me a villain to Hollywood, then I'll wear that badge proudly." She didn't need a script. She didn't need applause. She had the floor, and the nation's attention. By the time Karoline stepped down from the podium, the press room had already exploded online. Her final line, "If standing up for those things makes me a villain to Hollywood, then I'll wear that badge proudly," was now a rallying cry on conservative social media. Clips hit TikTok and X at lightning speed, cut between images of military families, blue-collar workers, and patriotic backdrops. But the applause came with consequences. By evening, a coordinated counter-narrative surged forward. A headline from Vanity Fair read, "Karoline Leavitt's Moral Crusade, Faith or Fanaticism." BuzzFeed posted a slideshow titled, "10 times Jennifer Lawrence fought for justice and got mocked by a Trump spokesperson." Even Netflix writers joined the fray, tweeting about political opportunism cloaked in performative virtue. But Karoline knew something they didn't. She wasn't acting. At 7:43 p.m., her personal phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. "Don't forget where you came from. You're not better than the rest of us. Be careful." No name, no context, just venom. Emma stormed into her office minutes later, her face pale. "Karoline, they're digging into your past." "What do you mean?" "They're posting photos. High school debate team, your college roommates' tweets, even your church's website. One progressive blog claims your pastor is radical." Karoline leaned back in her chair. "So this is what Hollywood does when they lose the microphone." Emma looked rattled. "They're trying to paint you as dangerous." Karoline didn't flinch. "Let them try. I'll remind them what real danger is. When people stop speaking truth because they're afraid of being destroyed for it." She pulled out a letter from her desk drawer, a handwritten note from a woman in Kansas. "I lost my husband to fentanyl. Thank you for reminding them that our pain matters too." Karoline held it for a moment, then looked up. "This is who I fight for. Not Twitter, not press rooms. Real Americans." Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Jennifer Lawrence was preparing for an appearance on The Late Show. Her publicist reviewed talking points. Downplay the feud. Emphasize unity. Stay charming. But behind the scenes, her team was livid. Karoline had flipped the spotlight, and worse, she'd done it without yelling, without hysteria, with clarity and calm. That made her dangerous in a different way. In D.C., Karoline's comms director entered the room. "Fox News wants you tomorrow. Hannity's asking for a solo segment." Karoline nodded. "Tell them I'll be there." But before the aide could leave, Karoline paused. "No makeup crew. No glam squad. I want to walk in as I am. This isn't a performance. It's a reckoning." Emma smiled faintly. "You really aren't like them." Karoline shook her head. "That's the point." Outside, cameras flashed. Protesters with handmade signs gathered at the gates, some shouting her name, others cursing it. The noise was deafening. But inside, Karoline sat quietly, the silver cross at her collar reflecting a soft glint of light. She didn't pray for silence. She prayed for strength. The following evening, the Fox News studio was buzzing with quiet tension. Producers whispered behind cameras, editors hunched over their stations, and makeup artists waited in the wings, though Karoline had declined their services. She had come exactly as she said she would. Natural makeup, hair tied back, a navy blue blazer, and that same silver cross glinting against her collar. At exactly 9 p.m., Sean Hannity's voice echoed into living rooms across America. "Tonight, we bring you the woman at the center of a national firestorm. She's been called everything from fearless to fanatical, depending on which side of the screen you're on. But love her or hate her, she's not backing down. Karoline Leavitt joins us live." The camera panned to her. Calm, steady, no hesitation. "Karoline," Hannity began, "last night, you went toe-to-toe with one of the most beloved actresses in Hollywood. Today, you're being dragged online. Again. What do you say to people who think you've gone too far?" She looked straight into the camera. "I say I didn't go far enough." That sentence broke social media in half. Karoline continued, her tone grounded. "I didn't come to Washington to win applause. I came here to represent Americans who feel unheard. If that offends celebrities who think DC should operate like a movie set, so be it." Clips of that line instantly hit X, racking up retweets faster than any statement she'd made before. This isn't about Jennifer Lawrence. It's about the idea that fame equals authority, that Instagram followers are more valuable than the voice of a small-town voter. Hannity leaned forward, clearly impressed. "Did you expect this much backlash?" Karoline nodded slowly. "Of course. That's how they operate. You stand your ground and suddenly you're dangerous. But I'll take dangerous over disposable." Meanwhile, in homes across the country, families watched with divided reactions. In Nebraska, a truck driver named Pete told his teenage daughter, "That girl's got guts. Reminds me of Reagan in '84. In Seattle, a college student tweeted, "She's terrifying, calm, polite, and absolutely relentless." The nation wasn't just watching, it was reacting in real time. Hashtags like Karoline Unfiltered and Truth Over Fame soared. Even international outlets picked up the story. Jennifer Lawrence's PR team scrambled. They hadn't expected Karoline to keep swinging with this much control. A Vanity Fair contributor posted, "Whether you agree or not, Karoline is reshaping political media. She doesn't rant, she dismantles." Back in the studio, Hannity asked, "Where does this go from here?" Karoline didn't miss a beat. "It goes wherever the truth takes it. If that means calling out hypocrisy on both coasts, I'll do it. If that means being hated by Hollywood, fine. But I won't be silent, and I won't pretend fame is more powerful than service." The final shot of the segment was simple. Karoline, seated beneath the American flag, not smiling, not performing, just steady, composed, and unyielding. She wasn't finished. She was just getting started. The day after Karoline's Fox News appearance, the media was still buzzing. Headlines shifted tone, no longer just questioning her loyalty to Trump, but analyzing her poise, her message, her growing influence. Even left-leaning outlets admitted Karoline hadn't crumbled. She had controlled the firestorm. Behind her West Wing desk, Karoline quietly read an email from a Kansas widow. "I lost my husband to fentanyl. Thank you for reminding them our pain matters too." That meant more than any trending hashtag. Meanwhile, Jennifer Lawrence canceled appearances. Her team tried to spin her silence as strategic, but inside Hollywood circles, whispers grew louder. She picked the wrong fight. Karoline, however, wasn't celebrating. She called her staff together. We're not reacting anymore. We lead. She began shaping a message bigger than any feud, one rooted in dignity, grit, and service. At the Conservative Youth Summit in Dallas, she stood before a crowd of thousands and said, "They told me to stay quiet. Instead, I stood, and the room froze. No theatrics, no shouting, just conviction." And somewhere in Los Angeles, Jennifer Lawrence watched that clip, knowing exactly what had just happened. 2 weeks had passed since the moment that froze the East Room, yet the country was still talking. What started as a celebrity jab had evolved into a national debate, one no longer about Karoline Leavitt versus Jennifer Lawrence, but about what it meant to stand for something real in an age dominated by performance. Hollywood PR teams scrambled to protect reputations. Jennifer Lawrence released a carefully worded statement. "I never meant to insult anyone personally. I simply spoke from the heart." But the damage was already done, not because Karoline had destroyed her, but because she hadn't played the game. Karoline turned down interviews with primetime anchors and glossy magazine spreads. She refused a sit-down with a major network. "This isn't a career move," she told her staff. "This is a course correction." That week, she spoke at a roundtable for young conservative women. No big lights, no viral setup, just raw, honest conversation. "I've been mocked for my age, my faith, and my role," she said. "But I'll never apologize for standing firm when others fold." A video clip from that event hit 1.2 million views in 24 hours. Not because it was theatrical, but because it was true. Back in LA, Jennifer watched the clip in silence. Her team wanted to counter it. But she knew better. She had stepped into Washington expecting a soundbite, and got something else entirely. A woman who didn't shout, but didn't shake either. One commentator summarized it best. Karoline didn't just win an argument, she won credibility. And in 2025, that's rarer than fame. A month later, the noise quieted, but the shift remained. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just a press secretary anymore. She had become something few in Washington truly are, a symbol, not of a party, not of a movement, but of clarity in a time ruled by noise. One morning, she returned to the same East Room where it all began. The chandeliers shimmered. The press was absent. No stage, no script. It was a leadership breakfast for young women in government. Quiet. Sincere. When she spoke, she didn't mention Jennifer Lawrence. She didn't need to. Sometimes the strongest response isn't a headline. It's just being the one who didn't back down. Afterward, a girl no older than 16 approached her, nervous but wide-eyed. "You made me believe I could speak," she said. Karoline smiled. "Then speak." Back at the West Wing, she reviewed a new wave of speaking requests from universities, think tanks, even international groups. She accepted none. For now, her mission was still here. President Trump stopped by her office later that day. "You ready to run for something?" he joked. Karoline didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, down Pennsylvania Avenue. "I didn't do this to run. I did it so people would stop running from truth." Outside, life moved on. But the image of that night, the moment she rose to speak, steady and unshaken, lingered in the minds of millions. Jennifer Lawrence eventually returned to the screen. But something in her tone changed. Less sharp, more cautious. Because she, like the rest of the country, had seen what happened when a celebrity mocked a young woman of conviction. The lights didn't dim on Karoline. They got brighter. And when the applause faded, she was still standing. In a world where applause is often louder than truth, and where fame can overpower conviction, one moment inside the White House changed the dynamic. Karoline Leavitt didn't shout. She didn't insult. She simply stood up, calmly, boldly, and without apology. She reminded a nation that titles don't make someone powerful. Truth does. And sometimes the most powerful answer to mockery is quiet, unshakable dignity. This wasn't just a clash between Hollywood and Washington. It was a mirror, reflecting who we are and who we choose to listen to. And in that reflection, millions saw something they hadn't seen in a long time. a young woman who didn't flinch. So the next time someone tells you to sit down, stay silent, or know your place, remember Karoline. Remember that one clear voice can silence a room full of noise, and that sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Because the truth doesn't shout, it stands.